Hello, my name is Liz, and I'm so glad that you joined us today. It's a new day. Let's jump on in it. There were some questions about what is this if-then consequence chart. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time explaining it to you and encouraging you to make one with your children. I learned about this method years ago when I was in the junior high situation, and I wanted to try it out. And there was a problem one of the days with a couple of kids fighting each other and just being mean and feelings being hurt. And so I sat the two seventh graders down and I said, let's talk about what's happening here. And so one side said their story, the other side had to listen to it, the other side said their story, this person, the first side had to listen. And when we got done, I said, okay, so you both have had a chance to air out the problem. You know each other's sides. You might not agree with it, but at least you understand where they're coming from. So what we're going to do is we're going to write down a piece of paper about what are the things we're going to do to avoid having this problem again. And how are we going to solve this problem? And so the kids wrote down what they wanted, how they could solve the problem and come to resolution. And then they also had to write down 3 things that would happen if they had the problem again. So they were looking for problem, the solution and resolution and consequences if there wasn't anything happening. So when they got done, they shared, they brought it to the table, and then we decided what we were going to use. How are you going to solve this problem if it happens in the future? And what's going to happen if you choose to exacerbate the issue? And what happened was, at the end of the time, they had this agreement that they both agreed that this is how they were going to try and solve the problem. Like they would walk away. They would tell the other person, I don't like it when you say that to me. They would, the consequence would be that they would be in trouble with the teacher. They could get a detention. They would have to, say 3 nice things about each other. Whatever it was, we wrote it down. They both looked at it. They both signed it, and they were both very happy. And then they walked away, and they were nice to each other because they'd had an argument that resulted in good feelings passed around by all. So that was really an eye-opening experience for me on conflict resolution done where both parties may not be completely satisfied, or they might be 100% satisfied, but at least they were heard. If you've ever want to be heard and the person has just shut you down, they've personally attacked you, they've made you feel bad, and you think, why would they do that? Well, it's their issue. It's not your issue, but it's theirs, and you're having to deal with the repercussions. It doesn't feel good. So in your household during this homeschooling time, you want to make sure that you have sat down and discussed what's going to happen. If this happens, then that's going to be the consequence. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you, I'm going to pull up this sheet here. If-then statements are a great way, again, to address a behavior problem. One of the things I learned when I was at the preschool was a program called 1, 2, 3 Magic, where if the child was picking up blocks and throwing them across the room, you could say, Aaron, that is not okay to do, and you need to stop, and that is 1. And the child looks at you and understands they need to stop. Now you can also add to that, you could go build with the blocks, or you can come over here and color a picture, again, giving them 2 choices. If you choose to continue this behavior, you already know, you're talking with a 2-year-old. All they need to hear is, Aaron, I don't want you to throw blocks across the room. You might hurt somebody. So you can either play with the blocks correctly, or you can come over here and color with crayons. Okay, kid understands. So let's say you've said it, the child keeps playing for a little while, then picks up a block and chucks it across the room. Maybe they don't even wait a second. They just look at you and they chuck it across the room. Now you don't say anything more. They already understand what they were supposed to do. They heard you. They weren't, and ignoring you. They heard you. So now the only thing you need to say is, that's 2. See the face? It's not, that's 2. Warning you. Nope, that's 2. If they do it again, you're done. You can say, that's 3, you pick them up, put them into timeout. If you have junior hires, it's going to be a much harder thing to pick them up and put them into timeout. But with the junior hires, you can actually, from elementary on up, you can certainly say, here's the consequences for this behavior. I started doing the if-then chart when my kids were probably 3, 5, and 7. They totally understood it. They were part of it. What were some of the things that we talked about? Well, if you're going to not pick up your toys right now, you will have to go to timeout. If you don't comb your hair right now, then you're going to have to go to school with messy hair. Well, some kids don't care if they go to school with messy hair. Some people do. If you don't turn off your video game right now, then you won't be allowed to play it again for 24 hours. Now, you might not be thinking that straight in the middle of the irritation that's currently happening. But if you've sat down with them and said, here are some things that are bothering me as your parent, and you get a chance to say some things that are bothering you, like when you have your workspace and your sibling is getting into your workspace, or they're erasing things and brushing eraser dirt into your lap, that would be very frustrating. So let's have some if-then consequences, okay? Just write down your list of, this is what's irritating me, then this is what's going to happen. What you're going to find is that the kids are going to have more serious consequences than you would have thought. Like they'll say, well, if you brush eraser dirt into my lap, then you're going to lose your video games for a week. Okay, that's their first go-to. I always had a list of 3. The first infraction, second infraction, third infraction. The kids are going to the 5th infraction of death penalty, and we don't need to have it that intense. So you can say, all right, well, I think that's an idea. We can write that one down, but let's save that for a really, really bad infraction. And hopefully we'll never have to use that. The worst infraction that my kids could think of was if they would get a bare butt spanking. That was pretty big. And we saved that for those emergencies. So I want to share a screen here of things that I had written down. Oh, hold on a second. Let me get to the share screen. Here we go. Share. I think it's that one. Behavior and consequences. All right. So are you seeing the behaviors and consequences? I have 2 here. I'm not sure if it's showing you the right one or not. Okay. I think you're seeing it. Do you see if you tend to give your child multiple warnings, even though you say things like, I'm not going to tell you this again, your child might learn to tune you out. It's important to teach your child you mean business the first time you speak. So if you're seeing that one's correct. If you're seeing this one, let me see. Is that right? Okay, it looks like it's the right one. Then there's another one here. I really can't tell. I'm so sorry. I can't tell what I'm sharing. All right, let's see here. I might just have to read it to you. All right, consequences for misbehavior. Starting fights. My attitude with my kids was, if you're going to start something, then we're going to have to end it. And we're going to have to do that together. So if you wanted to make, you wanted to start a fight instead of doing your homework, you wanted to start a fight instead of, playing with your toys, first infraction, you're going to sit in the chair for fill in the amount of minutes, because my kids were a little bit older and they ought to know better. Then, so sit in the chair for 15 minutes and verbally apologize with 4 ways you could have done things differently. Sit in the chair for 30 minutes and write a letter of apology listing 10 ways you could have done things differently. Now, that 30 minutes, 15 minutes, I mean, it could be like 5 minutes, it could be 6 minutes, but it's enough time for them to get over themselves and actually think of, how can I solve this problem, because I don't really like sitting in this chair. Sit in the chair for an hour and write a 2-page report on. Now, obviously, you wouldn't do that with a 7-year-old, okay? Screaming responses. If I say, hey, can you come over here? And they start screaming at me, no! Okay, so you can speak only in a whisper for 15 minutes there's a book called The Book of Virtues. You can scream into a pillow for 3 minutes nonstop. You can write down 50 ways one could express oneself without raising the voice, and then present those ways verbally to us. So these are things that were written down. I think the kids were actually involved. They were involved in writing this. I'm like, oh my gosh, they were serious. If you were smacking, hitting, kicking somebody, You had to use your energy instead to go up and down the stairs for 15 minutes and then verbally apologize, go down the stairs for 30 minutes, write a letter of apology. So you can see, I mean, they're pretty serious about this. Go up and down the stairs for 45 minutes, clean out the cat box, and then offer your sincere apologies, because nobody wants to clean out the cat box. And seriously, going up and down the stairs for twice is exhausting. So going up for 15 minutes is really bad. So you can see how awful they can be. And so this is where you have to temper some of that with, okay, well, maybe instead of for 15 minutes, maybe you have to go up and down for 3 minutes. And why? Because you have all this extra energy out. One of the things that I did with my kids was I said, okay, if you said something mean, like somebody, you know, you're sitting there and you hear one child say to the second one, "You're poopy pants." Okay, why would you say that? So if they do not immediately stop, then you can say 3 nice things. My kids have to think of 3 nice things to say to the person they just offended. They would then have to be real, not just, oh, I like your hair, I like the color of your shirt, I like how you talk with your hands. No, you know, real things. If you wanted to say, I like your hair, I like the curliness of your hair, I think that's really cool, I don't have that. Or I really like that orange on you, that looks really nice. Or I like the how you talk with your hands because it looks like birds flying in the air. Okay, those would be real. And there were a few times that I did this with my own children and other people's children. I didn't really care, my nieces, or some of the people I was just thinking about, where they hadn't been raised this way. They were mean to each other all the time with their mouths. And so I said 3 nice things and one wouldn't do it. Okay, now you have 4 nice things you need to say. And with every 30 seconds or 10 seconds, whenever I just decide, I'm like, okay, that's five nice things. You get up to 30 nice things. I think one of my kids got up to 30, 40 nice things they had to say before finally their stubbornness, they said, fine. And then they had to list all those different ways that the other person, they really liked about that person. That nitpicky stuff ends real fast when you have to say 3 nice things to make up for the negative thing you've just said. So these if-then consequence charts, you can see, you can be as creative as you want. There is, let me see if I can actually share this other one. See if I can do it. I'll try again. Share. So I don't know if I'm seeing the right one. There's one called from the verywellfamily.com, verywellfamily.com, and they have, oops, I'm sorry, I'm showing the wrong screen. Let me try this screen. Here, this is where it is. Okay. If you're a Bible follower and you want some scripture, disobedience for not answering and coming when called. He who spares the rod hates his own son, but he who loves him is careful to discipline him. We want to discipline our children. They will not function in the world if they do not have discipline. And so then there's some chastisement that needs to happen. So that you have your, if-then chart. If you don't come when I call at the first time, then, you're going to, obviously you're engrossed in something, but it's not okay to ignore me when I call. Doing regular chores, talking back, shouting no, or I won't. Okay, well then there's going to be some if-then charts. Whining. Oh, my kids they just were not allowed to whine. If they were whining in a restaurant, I immediately promptly took them out. They were not allowed to whine, scream, be rude, obnoxious in a restaurant. I didn't care if it was 20 below zero. We went outside without a coat and stood there until they decided they were going to behave, because it's rude to disrupt everybody's dinner because the child is having a moment. So you can bring a coat if you want to. I just moved so fast we didn't have time, nor did I take the time. Character traits: lying, stealing, cheating, bad habits, rude manners. Penalties: isolation, 15-30 minutes bed arrest was what they suggested. Loss of privileges: playing with others, swimming, computer, any privilege related to the offense. It's always important. If you say to the child, you did put your bike away, so you're never going to ride it again. Okay, that's pretty harsh. Was that like the 50th time it happened? Maybe they don't get to ride it for the next day. Maybe they don't get to ride it to go to their friends that they have to walk there instead, blessing journal. List 10 things you have to be thankful for. We're always hearing about gratitude, right? So you want to try and, when you get a little stir crazy, you start doing things you wouldn't normally do, right? And that's where your kids, you can't expect them to handle being in isolation if you're having a hard time being in isolation and not having your normal routine. So help each other by working together on these if-then consequences, helping each other to get through the moments where you're having a bad time, and saying, I love you anyway, it's okay. We just need to get through this and not continue it. In my family, my extended family, we have a rule that everyone is allowed one freak out on that vacation. And you can lose your mind and go put yourself in a timeout. And when you come back, it's okay. And we will forgive you and we love you, but that's your one, and that's all you can have. You're not allowed to freak out every day. You're not allowed to freak out several times a day. You're allowed one freak out. So you figure out what's going to work for your family and know that you can be as creative as you want and get everybody involved in that. And so I hope that's been helpful for you and giving you some ideas. Maybe you have some ideas, you put them in the comment box. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe if you've heard anything that you like and that is helpful, and share with your friends. We'll talk with you another time. Bye-bye.